My son shouted, "Mom, apologize to my mother-in-law right now or get out of my house." I stood up and looked straight into his eyes. My daughter-in-law smiled the kind of smile someone gives when they believe they've already won. I left before anyone could see me break. I never knew my own voice could sound so unfamiliar. But that Saturday afternoon, when I rose from the beige sofa I had helped them pick out, feeling every pair of judging eyes fixed on me, eyes that made me feel small, I understood something. Once certain words are spoken, they can never be taken back. My name is Jennifer. I'm 68 years old. For 26 years, I woke up at 5 a.m. to sew wedding dresses. My hands are rough from needles and thread, my back bent from an old sewing machine I inherited from my mother, my eyes dim under the weak yellow light of my small apartment. And all of it was for one reason: my son, Michael. But standing in his living room that day, heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my temples, I realized all those years of sacrifice meant nothing. The word thief still echoed in my mind. Patricia, my daughter-in-law, the woman I once treated like my own child, had just accused me of stealing her mother's gold brooch. Worse, she pretended to find it inside my purse, right there in front of everyone. Michael stood frozen, his face red, the veins on his neck bulging. My only son, the boy I used to hold when nightmares woke him, the boy I nursed when he broke his arm at 9, was now yelling at me like I was a criminal. "Mom, apologize to my mother-in-law or get out of my house." His voice sliced through the air. Mrs. Marlene, Patricia's mother, sat on the couch, clutching her chest in fake shock, though her eyes sparkled with satisfaction. Patricia's 2 brothers stood by the door, awkward and unsure. And Patricia stood beside my son, smiling like she'd already won. That smile woke something inside me. A thin curve at the corner of her mouth, quick enough that others might miss it, but I saw it. It was victory. In that moment, everything became clear. 3 days earlier, during her birthday party, Patricia had insisted I bring my black handbag to the living room while everyone else was outside in the garden. Then she found a reason to send everyone out to watch the fireworks, leaving me alone inside the house. That was when she planted her trap. It was perfect, and my own son had chosen to believe her. I took a deep breath, my knees trembling, but I refused to collapse in front of them. I grabbed my handbag, the one she had slipped the brooch into, and looked straight at Patricia. She still wore that smile. I met her cold, calculating brown eyes. Those eyes that once filled with tears at her own wedding now revealed the truth. She had never respected me. I was just an obstacle. The air in the room turned heavy. Michael waited for me to kneel and beg. Marlene adjusted her necklace, eager for the show. Patricia's brothers exchanged nervous glances. I spoke 3 words, calm but sharp, each syllable. A promise I wasn't yet sure how I'd keep. "You'll pay for this." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. Each word left my lips steady and cold. Patricia's smile vanished. I turned and walked toward the door. Michael stood frozen, maybe waiting for tears or pleas. But after 68 years, I had learned that dignity is worth more than comfort from people who don't respect you. I left that apartment, the home I had bought for him, and closed the door behind me. I didn't take the elevator. I walked down 3 flights of stairs so no one would see me fall apart. On the bus, gripping the metal pole as my legs trembled, the tears finally came hot, salty, heavy. An elderly woman beside me asked if I was all right. I lied and said yes. But the truth was, it felt like someone had torn a piece of my heart away. Not just because of the humiliation, but because of my son's choice. He chose to believe her. Silence did the rest. He threw me out of the house, the very one I had bought for him. Yet as the bus rolled down the avenue, something fierce rose inside me. Not just pain, but anger, resolve, a fire that had slept for years. I whispered to myself, I would not let this stand. It wasn't an empty threat. I meant every word. I might be old, with rough hands, wrinkled skin, and a curved back, but I wasn't weak. I would not let that woman destroy me without a fight. I didn't know yet that just 2 weeks later, it would be Michael standing at my door, desperate and begging for help. And that time, it would be my turn to repeat those same 3 words. If you want to know how the story turned around, stay with me, because this is only the beginning and its ending will make every moment worth it. You might be wondering, how could a mother be pushed this far? How could a son turn against the very woman who gave him life? To understand that kind of betrayal, you have to understand the sacrifices that came before it. It all started in 1997. Michael was 12 when my husband, Anthony, died of a heart attack. That morning, he was drinking coffee, complaining about traffic, when he suddenly collapsed right in front of us. Anthony was 46 years old. I remember the funeral like it was yesterday. Michael clung to me, sobbing uncontrollably. I had to stay strong for both of us, even though my heart was in pieces. I wasn't just a widow, I was a widow with a child, no steady job, no insurance, only an old sewing machine and $3,200 in savings. At first, the neighbors were kind, bringing food and saying the usual things. Everything will be all right. God has a plan. Time heals all wounds. But when the rent came due again, it was just me, Michael, and reality. I began sewing professionally. At first, I only repaired dresses or sewed buttons for neighbors, but now it had to become my living. I used what little money was left from the funeral to buy fabric, placed ads at the church, and left my phone number at the local hair salon. The first gown I ever made was for Mrs. Celine's daughter down the street. She paid me $180. When I held that money in my hand, I cried. Michael grew up to the hum of the sewing machine every morning, the sound of the needle-piercing fabric late at night. He never complained, he even helped me deliver finished dresses on weekends. Every time he hugged me, he'd say, "Mom, when I grow up, I'll buy you a big house so you'll never have to work so hard again." Those words kept me going. When Michael was 17, he got accepted into a private university for civil engineering. The tuition was overwhelming. Even cutting every expense wasn't enough, so I began sewing wedding dresses. It was exhausting, precise work, but it paid better. I charged $200 for the first gown, and the bride was so happy she referred me to 3 more friends. I worked until midnight, slept 4 hours, then started again. 5 years later, Michael graduated. I had paid every cent of his tuition, $187,000 in total. I kept every receipt, every record, every invoice. The day he got his diploma was the happiest day of my life. I thought all my sacrifices had finally paid off. Michael found a job as an engineer earning $3,200 a month. He still lived with me in our 1-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Chicago. Each month, he gave me $800 to help with rent. I accepted it but quietly saved half for him. 2 years later, Michael met Patricia. She worked as a receptionist at a dental clinic, pretty, polite, soft-spoken. When he introduced her, I cried tears of joy. I thought my son had found someone kind. They dated for 3 years. I tried to build a good relationship with her, invited her to lunch, taught her how to cook Michael's favorite dishes, even gave her my silver earrings. Patricia called me Mom Jennifer and said she'd never met a mother-in-law so sweet. In 2010, Michael said they wanted to get married, but they didn't have money. At that time, he earned $4,500 a month, while Patricia made about $2,800. They had just financed a used car. I had saved $128,000, my life's savings, and I spent $65,000 of it to pay for their wedding. I paid for the buffet, decorations, music, and more. I sewed the wedding gown myself with the expensive fabric she chose. The reception was held in a banquet hall at a country club with 180 guests. Patricia cried when she saw it all come together. She hugged me and whispered, "Thank you, Mom. I'll never forget what you've done for us." But the biggest gift came 5 years later. Michael got promoted and started earning $8,900 a month. Patricia quit her job, saying she wanted to focus on their home and prepare for a baby. They still rented a small apartment, and Michael often complained that paying rent was throwing money away. By then, I had saved $340,000 after years of sewing wedding gowns, even for brides from other cities. It was supposed to be my retirement fund. I was 58, with aching joints from arthritis, but when Michael told me about a brand new 2-bedroom condo in Chicago priced exactly at $340,000, I didn't think twice. I bought it in his name. I poured every dollar I had earned over 18 years of labor. Michael cried as he signed the papers, hugged me tight, and said, "Mom, I don't deserve you. I promise I'll cherish you forever." Patricia cried too, saying she'd treat the home like a temple, that I'd always have my own room there, that it was my home too. But I stayed in my small rented apartment, 1 bedroom, a kitchenette, and a cramped bathroom for $950 a month. Michael begged me to move in with them, but I refused. I told him they needed their own space. Truthfully, I didn't want to be a burden. I kept sewing, though slower. My body couldn't handle the same pace anymore. I took 3 or 4 orders a month, earning about $2,100, enough for rent, medicine, and food. I was content. My son had a home, a wife, a good life. I believed I had fulfilled my purpose as a mother. But I had no idea that every penny, every sleepless night, every drop of sweat would one day be forgotten, trampled, and turned against me by the very woman I once called daughter. The first 2 years after Michael and Patricia moved into their condo seemed peaceful, or so I thought. Every Sunday, I came over for lunch, bringing dessert, sometimes cornbread pudding Michael loved since childhood, sometimes banana pudding. Patricia greeted me warmly, pulled me into the kitchen, asked for seasoning tips and how to make fluffy rice. It all seemed genuine. Michael worked hard, and Patricia greeted him each evening with dinner ready, the house spotless, her smile radiant. He looked at her like she was his greatest prize. I silently thanked God for sending her to him. But by 2017, everything changed. Michael was promoted to project manager, earning $18,500 a month, more than I had ever seen in my life. And as if someone flipped a switch, Patricia became a different person. The first thing that changed was her wardrobe. She only wore designer brands, leather purses, imported shoes, dresses that cost more than my monthly income. Her hair, once dyed at home, was now styled every 3 weeks at an upscale salon in River North. Her nails were always polished, her makeup flawless, her perfume strong enough to smell from 10 feet away. I didn't judge. It was their money, their choice. But along with the new look came a new attitude. One Sunday, I came for lunch wearing a floral blouse I had sewn myself. It wasn't fancy, but it was neat and clean. When I walked in, Patricia looked me up and down and smirked. "Mom, don't you think that blouse is a little out of style, especially since we have guests today?" "Guests? Since when was I a guest?" I froze. Michael was in the kitchen, unaware. Patricia calmly set the table and added, "My mom, Mrs. Marlene, is joining us for lunch. You know how particular she is." I stood there holding my cornbread pudding, suddenly feeling small among all the crystal glasses and spotless white plates. About half an hour later, Marlene arrived, a 62-year-old woman, thin, short, modern haircut, dressed head to toe in designer clothes, her eyes scanning every detail of the room. She greeted me with 2 air kisses, then took the head of the table, my seat. During lunch, Patricia and her mother talked about things far beyond me: their upcoming trip to Miami, a new restaurant in downtown Chicago offering a unique culinary experience, and a spa that cost $800 a night. Michael didn't say much, just smiled proudly, happy that he could provide that kind of luxury. And I sat quietly, eating my food in silence. When I mentioned that I had just finished a wedding dress for my neighbor's daughter, Patricia laughed. "Mom, could you please not talk about sewing today? It's a little awkward." Awkward? The profession I'd devoted 26 years of my life to embarrassed her. Michael looked down, saying nothing. That was the day I felt the ground vanish beneath me, and everything only got worse from there. The visits slowly stopped. Michael would call to say they were busy, or that Patricia wasn't feeling well, or that they were going to the beach. Every excuse made sense, but the result was always the same: I was left out. When I did come over, I could feel their unease. Patricia rolled her eyes when I spoke. Marlene pretended to be polite, and Michael, blind in his happiness, saw nothing wrong. Once, I tried to surprise them by bringing Michael's favorite pumpkin jam. I rang the bell, but no one answered. Through the window, I saw them eating lunch with Marlene. The dining table was covered with the embroidered cloth I'd given them as a wedding gift. Fresh flowers, wine, laughter. They looked like a perfect family without me. I stood there with tears streaming down my face, then turned away, went home, put the jam in the fridge, and cried until evening. Patricia's words grew sharper over time. "Mom, have you thought about dyeing your hair? Those grays make you look really old." Or, "Oh, those sandals look like you bought them at a flea market." Sometimes she'd whisper, "Michael, your mom should change her toothpaste. Her breath smells." Each word cut like a tiny blade. Worse, I started believing it. I felt outdated, ugly, and useless. I stopped bringing homemade desserts and started buying them from expensive bakeries, spending money I didn't have. I bought a more modern blouse, which ruined my weekly budget. I even tried dyeing my hair at home and ended up ruining it. Patricia looked at me and sighed. "Such a shame. If you'd told me, I could have recommended my salon $450 a session, but totally worth it. $450, half my rent." Michael spoke less and less. Our phone calls became short and cold. Whenever I asked how he was, he'd just say, "I'm fine, Mom. Been busy with work." No stories, no warmth, no sharing. Between us stood a wall I couldn't break through. I tried talking to him once. It was a Saturday afternoon after 3 weeks without seeing each other. I called and said I needed to talk. Michael agreed to meet at a coffee shop near his house. When I arrived, he was already there, staring at his phone. He greeted me with a quick kiss on the cheek and asked, "Mom, what's going on? Is everything okay?" I took a deep breath and said, "Son, I feel like you're slipping away from me." I told him, "I feel like I'm no longer part of your life. Did I do something wrong?" Michael sighed the weary kind of sigh, from someone who doesn't want to continue the conversation. "Mom, you're overthinking. I'm just busy with work, and Patricia has her own things going on. We have our own schedule now, but that doesn't mean I don't love you." My voice trembled. "But sweetheart, I barely see you anymore, and every time I come over, I feel like Patricia isn't happy I'm there." He cut me off. "Mom, come on. Patricia adores you. She always says nice things about you. The problem is, sometimes you bring up sensitive stuff, or talk about old memories, or comment on her clothes, or get involved where you don't need to." I froze. I had never criticized Patricia's outfits, nor interfered in their lives, but she had made Michael believe that I did. I tried to explain. "Son, I never," but Michael glanced at his watch and interrupted. "Mom, I have to go. Patricia's calling. We have dinner plans." He paid for his coffee, hugged me quickly, and left. I stayed there for almost an hour, staring at my empty cup, trying to figure out where I went wrong when I'd lost my son. The truth was far worse. I hadn't lost him. He had been taken from me. The thief wore red lipstick, smiled sweetly, and called me mother-in-law, while quietly erasing me from my own son's life. I didn't yet know how far she would go, only that the worst was still to come, and when it did, it nearly broke me. For the next 6 months, I practically vanished from Michael's life. The phone barely rang. Family Sundays became non-existent. I woke up every Sunday morning staring at my phone, hoping he'd call and say, "Mom, come have lunch with us." But the call never came. When I called him, there was always a reason. "Mom, we're out today." Or, "Patricia's tired." Or, "We already made plans with coworkers." Eventually, I stopped calling because even dignity has its limits. At some point, you realize your presence only makes others uncomfortable, and the only way to keep your self-respect is to step back. But the worst part wasn't his absence, it was the feeling of being replaced. One Thursday afternoon, I decided to pass by their building. I didn't plan to knock, just to stand across the street and feel close to him, even for a moment. When I reached the corner, I saw Michael's car in the garage. Strange, he usually came home after 7 p.m. I stood there debating when the door opened. Michael walked out carrying grocery bags, and beside him was Patricia, arm in arm with her mother, Marlene. They were laughing together like the perfect family before heading inside. My chest tightened. He had taken the afternoon off to go shopping with his mother-in-law but never had time for me. I went home on the bus, tears streaming down my face. A little girl, maybe 10, handed me a tissue. I smiled, thanked her, and said I had allergies, but inside, I was breaking apart. My son was forgetting me. And worse, he was replacing me. Social media only made things worse. I wasn't very active, but I created a Facebook account just to see his pictures. There, I found endless photos of their happy family: Michael, Patricia, and Marlene. They were grilling on the rooftop, laughing together. At Patricia's birthday party, a lavish event, her mother stood beside her, cutting the cake as if she were the matriarch. I wasn't mentioned, as if I had never existed. In one photo, Michael hugged his mother-in-law with a caption, "Grateful for such an amazing second mom," a second mom, while the first had been erased. I commented, "Beautiful picture, son. I miss you." Patricia replied for him, "Hi, Mom. We miss you too. Come visit anytime." Those words, anytime, hurt more than never again. Michael didn't respond. That's when I began to understand this wasn't an accident, it was deliberate. Patricia was slowly, skillfully removing me from my son's life. She never forbade me from visiting. She just made me feel so out of place that I'd withdraw on my own. Michael had been convinced that distance was my choice. Sometimes Patricia even told him, "Honey, your mom's enjoying her own life now. Let her rest, it's good for her." Enjoying my life? At 66, living alone in a tiny apartment that wasn't freedom, it was loneliness. I tried one last time. In January, the weather was freezing. I called Michael. "Sweetheart, it's been so long since we talked. How about coffee, just the two of us like old times?" Silence on the other end. "Mom, I'm swamped with work right now," I pleaded. "Just an hour, son. I just want to see you." "Patricia already planned something for today, Mom. Maybe another time I'll check my schedule and call you." He never called back. That night, I lay on my narrow bed in the cold apartment, listening to the muffled voices of my neighbors through the wall, and cried until there were no tears left. I cried for 26 years of work, for sleepless nights, for the $340,000 I'd given without hesitation. I cried for the boy who once hugged me and said I was the best mom in the world because that boy no longer existed. Now there was only a stranger, a man who treated his mother like an obligation to be postponed indefinitely. Patricia had done her job perfectly. She erased me quietly, no fights, no drama, just the slow, steady fading of my existence, like someone blowing out a candle. Michael was blind, intoxicated by his new wealthy life and his flawless wife. He didn't realize he was losing his mother, or worse, he realized and didn't care. Maybe my son had chosen that life, that family, that replacement mother, the one with money, status, and everything I could never give him. Maybe I was only useful when he needed me, when he was poor, when he needed tuition, a house, a wedding. Now, I was just a shameful reminder of his humble past, something that didn't fit into dinner parties or beach vacations. I was the piece of his life he wanted to forget, and Patricia knew it. She used it to her advantage. 2 months after that hopeless call, I received a message from Patricia, a beautifully designed birthday invitation card with a note, "Your presence means the world to us." I was overjoyed. Thinking things were finally improving, I bought a small but meaningful gift, a music box that played Ave Maria. It cost me $130 I didn't really have, but I didn't care. It was a chance to reconnect with my son. The party was on a Saturday afternoon at their house. When I arrived, there were at least 30 guests, Michael's co-workers, Patricia's friends, relatives, even Marlene. Everyone greeted me politely but coldly. Patricia gave me a brief hug, thanked me for the gift without opening it, then walked away to greet someone else. Michael stood by the grill, laughing with his friends, barely glancing at me. I stood there, holding a glass of soda, completely invisible. A woman approached me. "Are you Patricia's aunt?" I smiled. "No, I'm her mother-in-law." "Oh," she replied awkwardly, then quickly found an excuse to leave. I stayed for 2 hours, surrounded by people yet utterly alone. I watched Marlene being pampered, laughing, being served food by Michael. Patricia kept taking pictures with her mother. And me, I was just another decoration in the room. When night fell, fireworks lit up outside. Patricia turned to me. "Mom, could you keep an eye on the stuff in here? Just in case someone walks in. You don't mind, do you?" I nodded. The whole crowd went outside, leaving me alone in the empty room, listening to their laughter echo through the window. In that moment, I understood inside the very house I had bought for my son, I was no longer family. I was the help. I went home that night feeling used all over again. But I didn't know that the party wasn't just an insult, it was the beginning of a plan carefully laid out. And within days, it would destroy me completely. 3 days after the party, on a Tuesday morning, my phone rang. It was Patricia. Her voice was trembling, tearful, desperate. "Mom, are you there?" My heart skipped. When someone calls you like that, you know it's bad. "I'm here, sweetheart. What happened? Is it Michael?" "No, it's me. Something serious. I don't want to worry Michael yet, but I need to tell you." I sat up, palms sweating. "Go ahead, Patricia. What is it?" She sniffled, as if wiping away tears. "My mother's gold brooch. It's gone. The one she gave me before she died. It's the only thing I had left from her." I didn't understand why she was telling me this, but I tried to comfort her. "Calm down, sweetheart. Have you searched thoroughly? Maybe you misplaced it." "I've searched the whole house, Mom. It's nowhere. It was always in a little box on my dresser, and now it's gone. I'm afraid someone took it. There were so many guests at my birthday party, people I barely knew." A chill ran down my spine. "You think someone stole it?" "I don't want to believe that, Mom. But that brooch was appraised at $8,000. My mom had it evaluated before she passed. Solid gold, 3 small pearls, made in 1952. And now it's gone." I tried to stay rational. "You should report it to the police if it was really stolen." "No, Mom. I'd be mortified. Michael would be devastated. His friends would gossip. I just want it to turn up." Patricia sobbed and hung up. I sat there, uneasy, a faint suspicion stirring, but I brushed it off. "Jennifer, don't be paranoid. The girl lost a keepsake from her mother. Anyone would be upset." 4 days passed. Patricia kept texting me about the missing brooch, saying she couldn't sleep, that she was heartbroken. One message read, "Mom, I keep wondering who could have taken it. There were so many strangers at that party. What a nightmare." Then, on Saturday, Michael called. His voice was serious. "Mom, can you come over for lunch today? Patricia really wants you here." My heart skipped. It had been over a month since he'd invited me to anything. "Of course, sweetheart. What time?" "Noon." I arrived 10 minutes early and rang the bell. Patricia opened the door and hugged me tighter than usual. "Hi, Mom, come in. Let me take your bag." She reached for my worn black leather purse. "That's all right, dear. I'll just leave it on the chair." "It's fine, Mom. I'll put it in the bedroom so it's out of the way." I was a little surprised but handed it over. Patricia took the bag and came back a moment later. Lunch was already set on the table, roasted chicken with mashed potatoes and green beans. Michael was setting the plates, while Marlene, Patricia's mother, sat at the head of the table with her usual air of superiority. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Jennifer," she said politely. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Marlene," I replied quietly. The atmosphere was strange. Michael barely spoke, Patricia was visibly tense, and Marlene kept glancing at me. I tried to start conversations several times, but they all died quickly. While we were clearing the table for dessert, Patricia's 2 brothers, David and Robert, arrived, 2 men in their 30s. I'd met only once or twice. "Sorry we're late," David said as they entered. I was surprised. Michael hadn't mentioned any other guests. Then Patricia stood up. Her face was pale. "Everyone, I need to say something." All eyes turned to her. My heart started pounding. "I wasn't planning to say this today, but I can't take it anymore. Everyone knows my mother's gold brooch is missing, right?" Michael frowned. "Missing? What do you mean, Patricia? Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to worry you. The brooch my mother gave me before she passed away, the one with 3 pearls. After the party, it disappeared. I've searched everywhere." Marlene put a hand on her chest, breathing heavily. "Oh, Patricia, that was a family heirloom. I remember clearly your grandmother gave it to me. This is terrible." "I know, Mom. I'm devastated." Michael stood abruptly. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? We could have looked for it or called the police." "I couldn't believe someone would steal it. But now, I need to know the truth." Then she looked straight at me. I recognized that look, immediately cold, calculating. A trap. "Mom," she said, voice trembling, "can I ask you something? Please don't take it the wrong way. Did you notice anything strange during the party? Maybe someone walking into the bedroom?" A chill ran through me. "Patricia, what are you saying? You think I saw someone steal it?" "No, not at all. It's just, you stayed inside the house while everyone went out to watch the fireworks, so I wanted to ask if you saw anyone walk down the hall or into the bedroom." Michael looked at me. Everyone's eyes were on me. "I didn't see anything, Patricia. I sat in the living room the whole time and never moved." "You're sure?" "Absolutely." The air grew heavy. Marlene broke the silence. "Patricia, darling, if the brooch still hasn't been found, maybe we should check, just to be sure." Michael frowned. "Check what?" Patricia bit her lip, tears spilling down. "I don't want to do this, but maybe we should check everyone's bags." I froze. "What do you mean, check bags?" My voice trembled. "Just to rule things out, Mom. Please don't take it personally. Maybe someone grabbed it by mistake." Michael shook his head. "Patricia, that's ridiculous. My mother would never." "I know, honey. But I need peace of mind. I need to know I did everything to find my mother's brooch." Now she was crying or pretending to. I looked at my son, waiting for him to defend me, to say he wouldn't let anyone humiliate his mother, but he stayed silent. "All right," I said coldly. "Go ahead." Patricia went to the bedroom and brought out my purse. She held it tightly, like evidence, placed it on the dining table, unzipped it, and began to search. My heartbeat roared in my ears. She took out my wallet, my old phone, a handkerchief, my keys, then stopped. Her fingers grasped something small and golden. It glimmered under the light. The brooch. "Oh my God!" Marlene gasped. Michael's face turned white. Patricia's brothers exchanged glances. Patricia turned to me, eyes glistening, voice breaking. "Mom, why?" The world collapsed around me. I couldn't breathe. It felt like all the air had been ripped from my lungs. I stared at the little gold brooch in her hand, real gold, 3 shining pearls, and my mind went blank. "That's impossible," was all I could say. Marlene jumped up so fast, the table rattled. "I can't believe this. Patricia, my poor child." "I didn't want to believe it either, Mom," Patricia sobbed, clutching the brooch to her chest. Michael stood frozen, looking at me as if I were a stranger. "Son, I didn't take it. I swear to God. I don't know how it got into my bag." My voice rose, desperate, begging him to believe me. But his eyes showed only confusion, disappointment, disgust. "Mom, how could you? Why?" "I didn't take it." My shout echoed through the room. Patricia's brothers stepped back. David whispered something to Robert, but I couldn't hear it. Patricia cried louder, wiping her tears. "Mom, if you needed money, why didn't you tell us? We would have helped. You didn't have to do this. I didn't do anything." My throat tightened. "Someone set me up. Someone put it in my bag." "Set you up?" Marlene scoffed. "Jennifer, who would do that and for what?" I looked straight at Patricia, deep into her eyes, and for a brief moment, I saw the glint of triumph behind her tears. The faint curve of a victorious smile she tried to hide. She had done it. She planted that brooch in my bag, but how could I prove it? "Michael, look at me," I said, my voice breaking. "I raised you alone. I worked 26 years to give you everything. Do you really think I'd steal?" He covered his face, his voice hoarse. "Mom, I don't know what to believe anymore. The brooch was in your bag, because someone put it there. Who? Who would do that, Mom? His shout made me flinch. In 33 years, he had never raised his voice at me. Patricia pretended to cry harder, sobbing, "Honey, please stop yelling. This is breaking everyone's heart." She stepped closer to Michael, placing her hand on his arm. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as if protecting a fragile victim. Watching my son embrace that deceitful woman, the one who had manipulated, divided, and destroyed the bond between us, something shattered inside me, not from pain or injustice, but from humiliation. The humiliation of standing in the very apartment I had paid for, accused of theft, looked at with pity and contempt by people who knew nothing about me. Marlene crossed her arms and stared at me smugly. "Jennifer, I think you owe my daughter an apology. It's the least you can do. Apologize for something I didn't do to the woman who had torn my family apart." "I will not apologize," I said, my voice low but firm, because I did nothing wrong. "Enough, Mom," Michael snapped, his face flushed. "Can't you see? The brooch was in your bag. Just apologize and this will be over." "No." "Why not?" "No, Michael, I will not lower myself for something I didn't do." His breathing grew heavy, nostrils flaring. Patricia buried her face in his shoulder, sobbing like the world was collapsing around her. And then Michael said the words I will remember for the rest of my life. "Mom, apologize to my mother-in-law, or leave my house." The room fell silent. I looked at the man before me, the child I once held in my arms, the boy I stayed up all night to feed, the teenager I hugged when his father died, the young man I worked decades to support. Now, in his place, stood a stranger one, who was throwing his mother out of the very home I had bought. "Leave your house?" I repeated, my voice strangely calm. "Your house, Michael?" He froze for a second, realizing what he'd just said. "Mom, I didn't mean it like that. You have to understand. I understand perfectly." I picked up the old leather purse on the table, the one that held the planted evidence, and looked at Patricia. She was still in Michael's arms, but when our eyes met, I saw that same victorious smirk flicker at the corner of her lips. I stepped closer. Michael tried to block me, but I brushed past him and stared straight into Patricia's eyes. "You will pay for this," I said slowly, clearly. The smile vanished. I turned and walked to the door. No one stopped me. No one called after me. I stepped into a different life. When the door closed behind me, I knew I would never be the same. Some betrayals don't just break you, they change you forever. I cried for 3 days straight, locked inside my small apartment. I didn't eat, didn't go out, just lay on my thin mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling. The phone rang several times, unknown numbers. I didn't answer. I didn't want pity. On the 4th morning, I woke up feeling different. The pain was still there, deep and raw, but underneath it burned something else, a fire, anger. Pure, sharp, steady anger. I got up, showered, got dressed, and pulled an old folder from my drawer. On the table were all the documents that proved what I had given Michael, every bill, every receipt, every bank transfer. 26 years of my life summed up in paperwork: $187,000 for his college tuition, $65,000 for his wedding, and most importantly, the purchase contract for the apartment worth $340,000, which had originally been in my name before I gifted it to him. A gift. It sounded noble, but for me, it was the biggest mistake of my life. I organized everything in chronological order, dividing it into 3 sections: education, marriage, and housing. If I had invested that money instead of giving it away, I would have nearly $600,000. Now $600,000 for the son who threw me out of the house over a brooch I never took. By early afternoon, I left home and went to see a lawyer. His name was Arthur Miller, a family law specialist. His office was in an old building downtown, on the 2nd floor. The elevator was broken, so I took the stairs. The secretary looked me up and down and asked, "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but it's urgent. I can pay for a consultation." She hesitated, her eyes flicking to my simple clothes, my worn shoes, and my old purse, then sighed. "Let me see if he's available." 10 minutes later, I was sitting across from his wooden desk. He was a man in his 50s, balding, thick glasses, Loose tie. You've got 10 minutes. What do you need? I placed the folder on his desk and told him everything, every detail, without crying, without begging, just facts. I told him about the money I'd given my son, the theft accusation, being kicked out of my own home, and I asked if I had any legal rights left. Arthur flipped through the papers, pausing at the house contract. When was this property transfer signed? 2015. Did you include a clause for revocation in case of ingratitude? A clause for what? He took off his glasses and looked at me with pity. Mrs. Jennifer, when gifting property, you should include a clause stating that if the recipient shows gross ingratitude or violates their obligations toward you, you can reclaim it. But this contract doesn't have that. My heart sank. So that means I've lost everything? He sighed. Not necessarily. There's a legal principle called revocation of a gift due to ingratitude. If the child commits serious acts of disrespect or refuses to support a parent in need, the court can annul the gift. I was thrown out of my house and called a thief. Isn't that enough? He nodded. Yes, but you'll need evidence, witnesses, recordings, or something verifiable. I shook my head. I have nothing. How much would a case like that cost? About $8,000 up front, plus court fees. It could take years. I left the office heavy-hearted. Even if I was right, I didn't have the money or strength to fight. But as I walked down the crowded street, my eyes caught a small sign: Private Investigation Services, confidentiality guaranteed. A spark lit inside me. I walked in. A man in his 40s, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, looked up. What can I do for you? How much do you charge to investigate someone? Depends. Who are we talking about? I need everything on my daughter-in-law, her finances, her debts, her secrets, anything. He took notes. Full name? Patricia Sanders. I gave him her social security number from the marriage records. $1,200. You'll have the results in a week. It was nearly all the savings I had left, but I agreed. I wasn't going to stop, not until I knew the truth. I walked out of there with only one thought. If Patricia was cruel enough to frame me, then she had to have secrets, dirty ones. And every liar leaves a trail. I just had to find it. The next week felt like the longest of my life. Every minute dragged like an hour, every hour like a day. I couldn't sleep. My heart pounded every time I thought about the report. Would he find anything? Or had I just thrown $1,200 into the river? I tried to stay busy, taking sewing jobs I'd turned down before, not just for money, but to keep my mind from collapsing. Still, every time I stopped, the shame came flooding back. Michael's voice yelling at me, Patricia's smug smile, the humiliation burning my skin. On the 5th day, my phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Jennifer, this is Luis Alvarez, the investigator. I've completed the report. My heart nearly burst from my chest. Did you find anything? A lot. Can you come to the office? 2 hours later, I was sitting in the same small room, a thick envelope in front of me. My hands trembled as I opened it. 15 pages. Luis began explaining as I flipped through. Your daughter-in-law has a terrible financial history. She has 4 credit cards all maxed out. Total debt, $43,880. She's been paying only the minimum balance for 8 months, and the interest is piling up fast. Purchases include high-end fashion stores, luxury restaurants, salons, spas, and vacations. Her spending routinely exceeded Michael's take-home pay, and right now she's unemployed. I kept reading. There were copies of invoices. $2,300 for a handbag, $1,850 for a dinner for 6, $980 for imported shoes. Luis turned another page. Remember the brooch she said was her late mother's heirloom? My throat tightened. Yes, I traced it. She bought it at a luxury consignment store on the north side for $890, then lied that it had been appraised at $8,000. I stared at him. $890? She said her mother left it to her and even had it appraised. Luis smirked. Her mother's alive, Marlene Smith, 62, a retired state employee. Their relationship is strained. Marlene often complains about having to support her daughter financially. I was stunned. Everything was a lie. She made it all up, bought the brooch, invented the story, and planted it in my bag. Luis nodded. That's what it looks like. And there's more. He handed me a bank statement. This is Michael and Patricia's joint account. 2 months ago, there was a deposit of $34,600, Michael's savings. Then came multiple cash withdrawals, $5,000, $3,800, $2,500, $4,200, all from ATMs. I stared at the numbers, my fists clenching. The final piece of the puzzle fit. Patricia didn't just want to erase me from Michael's life, she was draining his money too. And I swore she would pay for every dollar and every tear I had lost. In the statement, Luis pointed at the last line. She's slowly withdrawing chunks of cash, probably to pay her credit card debt, without letting Michael know. But it's not enough. The debt keeps growing. I stared at the figures, the undeniable proof of who Patricia truly was. Luis, may I keep this report? Of course. You paid for it, it's yours. I walked out of the office, clutching the folder to my chest. For the first time in 10 days, I felt a flicker of hope. But I wasn't going to confront Patricia, not yet. If she had taught me anything, it was that quiet revenge always cuts deeper than chaos. The next day, I went back to see Arthur, the lawyer. I handed him the report. He read it carefully, adjusting his glasses several times. With this evidence, you have a very strong case. We can sue to reclaim the apartment based on proven ingratitude, and we can also send an official notice to your son, informing him of his wife's financial situation. How much would that cost? I asked. Given what you've already prepared, I'll take the case for $5,000. Half up front, the rest when we win. I only had $2,100 left in savings. Can I pay half now and the rest over 3 months? He thought for a moment. All right. But you know lawsuits take time. I understand. I want to do it. That afternoon, I signed the contract. Arthur drafted a formal legal notice to Michael, demanding the return of the apartment or its full value based on severe ingratitude. He attached all receipts and transfer records showing how I'd funded everything. A legal officer will deliver it to his workplace. As for Patricia's debts, I suggest you show that report to your son in person. I agreed. 3 days later, the notice was sent. And I waited. I waited with the patience of someone who had woken up at 5 a.m. for 26 years to work. I knew that once Michael saw those numbers, once his lawyer explained the consequences, he would have no choice but to face me not as the humiliated mother, but as the woman he had underestimated. 10 days passed after the delivery. 10 days of absolute silence. I didn't call, didn't text, didn't visit. I just kept living, sewing, paying bills, sleeping little, waking with a heavy heart. But this time was different. I had acted. I had stood up. And that alone gave me a strange new strength, a dignity I thought I had lost. On the 11th night, close to 10 p.m., there was a frantic pounding on my door. Not gentle knocks, desperate thuds. Mom! Mom! Please! Open up! I froze. It was Michael's voice, but not the cold, distant tone of the man who had thrown me out. This voice was broken, trembling, panicked. I rushed to the door. Michael stood in the dim hallway, shirt wrinkled, hair messy, eyes red and swollen. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. What happened, son? He stumbled inside, collapsing into my arms, sobbing like a child. His whole body shook. Mom, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I closed the door slowly, still not understanding what was happening. The son who had once turned his back on me, believing his wife's lies, was now on his knees, crying in my apartment. Part of me wanted to push him away, but another part, the mother in me, pulled him close. Calm down, sweetheart. Tell me what happened. I helped him sit on the old chair and poured him a glass of water. He drank it in one gulp, then choked out, She's gone, Mom. Who? Patricia. She's gone. Took everything. My heart clenched. What do you mean, everything? Michael wiped his tears, anger seeping into his voice. I woke up this morning and she wasn't home. I thought she'd gone out, but when I got back tonight, the house was empty. Clothes, purses, makeup, everything gone. She drained our joint account $22,300. I stayed silent. She left a note, he continued, his voice breaking. A damn note. She wrote that she couldn't live with a weak man who didn't set boundaries with his mother, that I was spineless and controlled, and that she deserved a real man. He swallowed hard. But the worst part, Mom, was her final confession. We argued last night, after she got a bill $11,000 from a credit card I didn't even know existed. I asked her about it, and she told me everything. His eyes met mine, full of regret. She said the brooch wasn't her mother's. She bought it at a thrift boutique and planted it in your bag. The whole thing was a setup to turn me against you. I went numb. I should have felt relief, vindication, but all I felt was deep sorrow. Michael went on. She said she wanted me all to herself, that there was no room for you in the life she wanted to build, and if I were a real man, I would have cut you off long ago. He lowered his head, tears streaming down. Mom, I'm trash. I believed her, kicked you out of your own house, and now I've lost everything, my mother, my money, my dignity. I sat beside him, unable to speak. Part of me wanted to say, I warned you, but what good would that do? He was already broken. There's one more thing, Michael whispered. Today I got the letter from your lawyer about the lawsuit to reclaim the apartment for my ingratitude. He looked at me, eyes bloodshot. I can't be mad at you. You're right. I was awful, blind and cruel. The room was silent. Mom, I don't have the money to repay you. Patricia took it all. There's $17,000 of credit card debt under my name because I co-signed for her. I know you have every right to take the apartment back, to cut me out completely, but please, give me a chance to make things right. I looked at the man before me, the baby I once lulled to sleep, the son I had worked my whole life for, and realized we had both lost so much. Michael, I said, firm but not harsh, I love you, and I always will. But love can't exist without respect. You hurt me in the deepest way, accusing me of theft, throwing me out, believing a liar instead of your mother. He lowered his head. I know, Mom, and I'll live with that guilt forever. Good, I said softly. Because you need to learn that trust must be earned, that family isn't replaceable, and that dignity always comes with a price. Michael looked up, his eyes filled with both fear and hope. Mom, will you forgive me? I took a deep breath. I will, because you're my son. But there's one condition. He looked at me, trembling. What condition, Mom? I stood, went to the cabinet, took out the folder I'd shown the lawyer, and placed it on the table in front of him. Open it. He opened it slowly, each page rustling in the quiet room. I saw the moment it hit him, his eyes widened as he read the numbers, the receipts, the transfers. Each page was a record of years of sacrifice. Mom, I didn't know it was this much. Didn't know, or didn't want to know? I asked calmly. He stayed silent. $187,000 for college, $65,000 for your wedding, $340,000 for the apartment. That's not counting the years I fed you, clothed you, bought your books, every meal, every expense. Do you know what it all adds up to, with interest? He shook his head. Almost $600,000, Michael. $600,000. While I lived in a tiny rented apartment, eating eggs and rice to save money, you lived the life I never had. Tears streamed down his cheeks again. I'm selfish. Yes. But selfishness can be healed. Do you know how? He lifted his head, waiting for an answer. Through humility, through work, and through consequences. I sat beside him. Here's my condition. You will sell the apartment. His face went pale. Sell it? Yes. You'll sell it, pay off all the debts in your name that she left behind. With what's left, you'll buy a smaller place, something that matches your real means, not the illusion you two lived in. He was about to protest, but I raised my hand. I'm not finished. You'll do it on your own, no help from me, no money from me, no signatures under my name. You must learn to live by your own income, not by what I built for you. Michael wiped his face, swallowing hard. And when you've done that, when you live on your own work and pay off every debt, then we can rebuild our relationship. But this time, on real respect. But Mom, he whispered, if I sell the apartment and pay everything, I won't have much left. I'll have to move farther out, to a smaller place. I looked him straight in the eye. Welcome to my life for the past 26 years. He fell silent. I continued. One more thing. I'll withdraw the lawsuit. I won't reclaim the apartment through the court. But you'll sell it voluntarily, and you'll use that money to fix what you and she destroyed. That's not revenge. That's justice. Michael took a deep breath and nodded. I agree. I accept everything. I deserve the consequences. It's not about what you deserve, I said. It's about what you learn. He hugged me slowly, sincerely. Thank you, Mom, for not giving up on me, even when I didn't deserve it. I returned his hug, though my voice stayed firm. Now go home. Tomorrow, start rebuilding your life. When you need advice, you can call me, but not for money. I'm not your financial safety net anymore. You're an adult with a career. It's time to live like one. He nodded, wiped his face, and stood. Before leaving, he turned back. Mom, about Patricia. Do you want me to find her, or call the police? I thought for a moment. No. Let her go. People like her carry their own poison, and eventually, it destroys them. When that happens, I won't be the one to save her. Her conscience will handle that. He nodded and left. I closed the door, leaned against it, and burst into tears. But this time, they weren't from pain, they were from release. For the first time in years, I had put myself first, demanded respect, set boundaries, and no one could take that from me. 6 months passed. Michael sold the apartment for $385,000. He paid $17,000 in credit card debt, $8,000 remaining on a car loan, plus taxes and selling costs. What was left, about $295,000, he used as a down payment and reserves to buy a smaller 2-bedroom place and cover moving and closing costs. Every Sunday, he came to visit me. He brought fresh bread, brewed coffee, and we talked, really talked. Not small talk, but deep conversations about life, mistakes, and new beginnings. I watched my son change. He learned to cook because no one else would. He learned to wash his clothes, iron his shirts, clean his home. He learned humility, something money had never taught him. As for me, I still lived in my old rented apartment, still sewing, but lighter in spirit because I no longer had to save anyone. I only had to live for myself. One Sunday afternoon, as we sat drinking coffee, Michael took my hand. Mom, I want to thank you. For what? For teaching me the hardest but most necessary lesson of my life. I could have lost you forever, but you still gave me a chance to make things right. You didn't cover for me, but you didn't abandon me either. I smiled. That's what mothers do, son. We don't protect our children from mistakes, we teach them how to rise after they fall. He nodded, eyes glistening. I'll never disappoint you again. Don't promise that, I said softly. Just promise you'll always respect me. The rest we'll build together. And we did. Now, looking back, I regret nothing, not the sacrifices, not the pain. Because everything taught me one truth. Dignity can't be bought, respect can't be begged for, and true love isn't about enduring every wound. It's about knowing when to say, enough. If my story made you think of yourself, of someone who once hurt you, or of a lesson you've learned, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to set boundaries with someone you love? Share it in the comments. Your story might give courage to someone who needs it. And if you believe that every experience is a lesson in growing stronger, stay with me so we can keep listening, learning, and healing together.